Welcome to Estate Planning Basics with Larry Parman. Mr. Parman is the CEO and founder of Parman Easterday, a law firm that practices exclusively in estate planning, elder law, and business succession planning. In this series, Mr. Parman will dive deep into important aspects of estate planning, challenges in the realm of elder law, and tips on how to successfully transition your business. Here's Larry Parman.
Hello everyone, Larry Parman here on Friday afternoon. Well, what a long week. Whew. So I had a tough meeting this morning about a guardianship issue. Well, it just breaks your heart when you see family members fight and argue, particularly when mom's involved and she's the person whom the guardianship's being contested. Siblings fighting with one another. It's very sad. So anyway, not the topic of the conversation today, but here's what I want to talk to you about. So sometimes people express a grave concern about their children blowing their inheritance. Well, I get that. So they worked hard their entire life and they built up a nice sizable estate. And by the way, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be about any amount. Most of us would hope that our children don't completely blow what they inherit from us. Make sense? So you get into all kinds of interesting conversations. So for example, is creating generational wealth a good thing? Does it help the children or not help the children? You get into all kinds of conversations about this. So for example, I hear people, even our own clients, talk about, well, wait a minute, I have a 3.5%, 4% mortgage. Am I contributing to generational wealth if I just pay off my loan? Well, people forget, and sometimes they don't want to acknowledge the fact that the long-term return on the stock market is 10%. Now, sometimes people who are a little bit older say, well, wait a minute, I don't need to be in the stock market. Good financial advisors would probably agree with that. At least not 100%. But for inflation protection and growth of the estate, you certainly want to have some of your assets invested in the equity market. But yet, sometimes we don't do that. So are we really serious about generational wealth? Too often, I think we're driven by let me say it this way. We make investment decisions too often based on either fear, in which we fall victim to buying annuities when it may not be appropriate because we don't want to suffer the risk of loss. Or we have greed and we go out and do silly things with our investments in order to capture dramatically more return than maybe the market's giving us. So if if the market's giving us an 8% return on general and you fall victim to somebody who tells you you can make 20% a year on your money, guess what? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. So in that case, just remember, it's very simple. If you're seeing an investment like that that's way above what the market's offering and what you're hearing about, then don't do it, because the risk in that stretch for that return is just too great. And it's possible you lose everything and completely destroy your vision, your objective for creating generational wealth. Another problem we see is that sometimes people undermine their own efforts and desire to create generational wealth because they support their children too much to maintain the children's lifestyle while the parents are still living. Let me say that another way. They give their children too much money. Let me say, well, that's probably not fair. They give their children money that they feel like their children need to maintain a lifestyle that the child wants, rather than the child going out and getting a better job or trying to come up with ways to make money themselves. Now look, I'm not talking about a right or wrong here because different people have different motivations and so forth. All I'm saying is, fear, greed, and using the money that you would hope to have gone for generational wealth to support children during your lifetime may not be the best way to do that. So Another quick point. I mean, generational wealth is not just for rich people, for mega rich people. So we hear all the stories about the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and so forth. And those are interesting stories to read, but I'm more interested in the couple that has $1 million or a couple $1 million, and how can that be preserved in the best long-term interest of the child and maintain that wealth as long as possible. So what we're really talking about here is creating ways to establish a foundation for good planning. And what happens too often when we create our estate plan is we say, well, just give the kids the money and let them do with it what they want. Well, that's almost a guaranteed recipe for destroying generational wealth. And I hear it all the time. My kids are really smart. They'll do great things. They're making lots of money right now, and I don't have to worry about them. But guess what? Statistics show us something different. They show us that it simply doesn't happen in the majority of cases. That generational wealth typically disappears entirely at the third generation, if not before. So maybe the idea is to provide the money to them on a more structured basis. Maybe, for example, holding the property in trust for them. We've even had clients stipulate, and I think it's a pretty good idea, that a child's distribution cannot exceed their adjusted gross income in any 1 year. Okay, that's a pretty decent idea. So if you have a child that's a teacher making $50,000 a year, well, maybe there's a little financial stress in that family, and an extra $50,000 would be extremely helpful to them, but it wouldn't impair the entire amount of your estate. Because once you give the money to your children, then it's susceptible and exposed to the vagaries of their divorce, their poor decision making. They're becoming victimized by charlatans or ne'er-do-wells or people wanting to take advantage of them. So my point is that holding money in trust for your child during their lifetime can be a pretty solid idea in terms of moving toward the idea of generational wealth and capturing your vision in terms of practical applications. So also want you to think about this from a tax point of view. So keep in mind the estate tax exemption is going to go back to around $7 million January 1st, 2026. That's after it's adjusted for inflation from $5 million, which is what the law currently states. So then we also couple that with the fact that when you're taking money out of IRAs, when the children are taking money out of IRAs, they have to pay the income tax that you would have paid because you put the money in on a pre-tax basis, and someone's going to pay the tax. If you die and they inherit that IRA, they will pay the tax. So perhaps it's a good idea to consider a systematic conversion of your taxable IRAs to a Roth equivalent IRA, because in the case of the Roth, there's no tax due when the money is taken out. The money is still includable in your estate, but it's not subject to income tax. Well, I've gone on too long. So anyway, hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll be talking to you more as these ideas come up. Tune into our YouTube channel and watch the videos. You can send us an email at info@parmanlaw.com. That's PARMANLAW.com. info@parmanlaw.com. Anyway, great being with you. Talk soon. Take care.
If you would like to learn more about creating an estate plan for your family, protecting your assets if you have to go into a nursing home, or transitioning your business, call 405-843-6100 or send an email to info@parmanlaw.com. That's 405-843-6100 and info@parmanlaw.com. Thank you.